Hey guys, welcome to the writing workshop number 2, also known as almost everything you need to know about punctuation, but we're afraid to ask. So this will deal with punctuation. If you'll take out your content draft, we will be using that to help us evaluate our success with punctuation. All right, the first thing that you see here is a holistic punctuation chart, and it is separated into 4 columns. The 4 columns differentiate the usage of each of these types of punctuation. The first column is for termination or the ending of a sentence. So to separate and to end a clause or a sentence from another sentence, you use one of these types of punctuation. So period, exclamation point, question mark, they all go in this section. When you need to combine words, phrases, or clauses, you will use one of these types of punctuation. Combination separation, comma, semicolon, colon, dash, and hyphen. If you need to set off introductory remarks to introduce ideas, you will use a comma, a colon, or a dash. And then finally, if you need to enclose information in a sentence, you can use a comma, a dash, parentheses, brackets, or quotation marks. All right, so what are we going to do with this chart? Well, today's objective is for you to create a punctuation inventory based on your content draft. So please turn to the last page of the content draft and draw this holistic punctuation chart. Yes, I said draw the holistic punctuation chart on the back page. Then read through your draft and circle every punctuation mark within your paper. Next, keep a tally on that holistic punctuation chart of how many of each type of punctuation you have included within your paper. And then ultimately, what we will do after this lesson is evaluate how you used each punctuation mark. So if you used periods, exclamation points, and questions, did you use them for termination and separation? When you used a comma, what was your purpose for using a comma? We'll have to make sure that you used it correctly. All right, so if you want to pause the video right here so that you can draw the chart and you can do the inventory, let's do that now. But I'll continue with the next activity. Okay, top 10 most issues, I guess, with punctuation. First is the use of apostrophes. Main thing you need to know about apostrophes is that you should not use apostrophes to form plurals. Apostrophe use is for possessives and for certain contractions. There are some exceptions. The exceptions are you can use an apostrophe for plurals of lowercase letters. For example, dot your I's from here on this bottom portion and cross your T's. That looks terrible to me, but that is okay based on the exception to the rule. You can also use an apostrophe for plurals of certain words, like we need to tally the yeses, nos, and maybes. In that case, it is acceptable for you to use the apostrophe S for a plural. And then also you can use the plurals of certain abbreviations. For example, the staff includes a dozen PhDs and 4 MDs. Since those are abbreviations, then you can use the apostrophe S to form a plural. So check carefully in your paper to make sure that you used apostrophes correctly, or you will make the grammar police very upset. Second, know where to put the quotation marks, especially in a literary analysis essay. So here's the rule. Let's read it together. Periods and commas go inside quotation marks, even if they aren't part of the material being quoted. All other punctuation marks go outside the quotation marks unless they are part of the material being quoted. So look at this example. Any further delay, she said, okay, so you have a comma right here. The comma is inside the quotation marks, would result in a lawsuit. You have a period and it is inside the quotation marks. But let me go ahead and address something. Whenever you are using parenthetical citation, the MLA citation, after a quotation, then you will find that the period will go after the parentheses. So it goes like this. It will be, would result in a lawsuit, in quotations. Your period's going to be at the other end of your parentheses. So I should have included some of those examples, but please check out the MLA guide that's on Ms. Waleen's site or Ms. Strawn's website so that you can be sure that you're using the correct documentation or punctuation when you have a parenthetical citation. This last example, his latest story is titled The Beginning of the End. Well, since that's a title in quotation marks, you see the semicolon is outside the quotation marks. Wouldn't a better title be The End of the Beginning? Title is in quotation marks, and then this ending punctuation is outside. Okay, quotation marks. All right. Probably the biggest issue I see is this rule here. Know how to join two independent clauses. Independent clauses are complete sentences. So there are basically 4 to 5 ways actually to fix this problem. So if you want to join them together, you can do number 1, a comma and a conjunction. Number 2, you can use just a semicolon. A third way is to use a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb like however, therefore, moreover, then a comma after that. Or number 4, you don't have to use any punctuation at all if you just use a subordinating conjunction like because or while. So, use a comma plus one of the fanboys. Fanboys stand for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so, to join two independent clauses to avoid what's known as a comma splice. And let me show you in this sentence. My hamster loved to play, comma, I gave him a hula hoop. All right, so you have a complete sentence here. That's independent clause, my hamster loved to play. And then you have an independent clause, I gave him a hula hoop. You cannot join it with only a comma. That is incorrect. Any of these 4 ways are correct. My hamster loved to play, comma, so I gave him a hula hoop. Or my hamster loved to play, semicolon, I gave him a hula hoop. Also correct is my hamster loved to play, semicolon, therefore, comma, I gave him a hula hoop. And lastly, my hamster loved to play because I gave him a hula hoop. Notice there's no punctuation in that particular sentence. Use of a hyphen, you can read this slide, but basically when you have 2 or more words serving as an adjective before the word they're modifying, that should normally be hyphenated. I don't really see an issue with this most of the time, but go ahead and know the rule. Can't hurt. Okay, the colon and the semicolon, probably some of the most misunderstood punctuation. Both of them can be used to connect two independent clauses. So when the second clause expands on or explains the first, then you will use a colon. When the clauses are related, but the second one does not really follow or depend on the first, then you will use a semicolon. So here's an example. You use a semicolon in this sentence. Only 1/3 of Americans have a passport, semicolon. The majority of Canadians have a passport. Okay, so the Canadians and the Americans, the fact that they have passports does not really relate to each other. They're related, but they're not contingent upon each other. But the second example, only 1/3 of Americans have a passport, colon. For most, foreign travel is either undesirable or unaffordable. This second portion depends on the first portion. Okay, so know when to use the colon, know when to use the semicolon. You can also use the colon whenever you are introducing a list. So I included this as the next on the next punctuation rule on the top 10 list. So use a colon to introduce a list only when the introductory text is a complete sentence. So when the first clause is a complete sentence, then you use a colon. So not all lists should be introduced with a colon. Let's look. Correct. Please bring the following items, colon, and then you have a list of those items. This, please bring the following items, is a sentence on its own. It's an independent clause. So it's okay to use the colon here. This is incorrect, the second version. Please bring, colon. Okay, please bring, we're expecting something after that. That is not an independent clause, so you would not use colons in this case. Here's another correct one. Please bring a flashlight, comma, a comfortable pair of hiking boots, comma, and a jacket. We didn't need the colons here, so that works. Or this is correct as well. Please bring the typical evening hiking gear. All right, that's a complete sentence, so we have a colon, and then we can just list out the items that we need. Okay, the next use that we want to review is the use of commas. Okay, so when do we use commas? You can use commas to indicate non-essential information. So like extra parenthetical information could be set off with commas. So if you can omit the information without changing the general meaning, then that information should be set off with commas. Okay, so if it's non-essential information, then set it off with commas. So here, this is correct. Here, the novelist Don DeLillo seldom gives interviews, okay? Because you have to have this information about Don DeLillo. If you say the novelist seldom gives interviews, we don't know to whom you're referring. So you would not set this off in commas. And they give you the incorrect version. And the explanation is the identity of the specific novelist is essential to the meaning of the sentence. Here's a correct version. America's first president, George Washington, served from 1789 to 1797. All right, now, America's first president, we could look that information up. We don't necessarily have to have George Washington. We've only have one first president in America. So it's non-essential information. You would not write it in the same way without the commas. America's first president, George Washington, served from 1789 to 1797. That is incorrect. Okay. All right, more comma usage rules. Use commas to set off introductory words, phrases, or clauses. For example, generally, comma, extraterrestrials are friendly and helpful. I find that I use this format often in my writing. I start with an adverb like generally. So generally is an introductory word, comma. Moreover, comma, some will knit booties for you if you ask nicely. That is also correct. You can go even with more words like in fact, comma, Godzilla is just a misunderstood teen lizard of giant proportions. And then you can have introductory clauses. Throughout his early life, comma, he felt a strong affinity with a playful dolphin named Flipper. Okay, so that is correct. So really we would call that a complex sentence because you have an independent clause, he felt a strong affinity, and then throughout his early life here you have a dependent clause. If you discover that you feel nauseated, comma, then you know you've tried my clam surprise. All right, again, you have an introductory clause here. You put your comma after that introductory clause, and that is correct. Okay, so you would evaluate that in your paper. Know how to use the em dash. That's relatively new, at least in my world. I don't use many dashes, but the em dash is pretty versatile. So you can take the place of commas, parentheses, or colons. In each case, it's a little different. So em dashes can be used in place of commas. You can do that to enhance readability. But dashes are always more emphatic than commas. So look at the example. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go pretty quickly to the next one. Find out more about the em dash. You can use it in place of a colon when you want to emphasize a conclusion. And you can use it to replace a pair of parentheses. The video is probably going to end here in a moment, but I will have this on the PowerPoint so that you can still read all of the rules for dashes. I would like for us to try to use some dashes in our paper. Last 10 seconds. Now, do your comma inventory, your punctuation inventory, and you will turn that in today. Have a good day.